All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. For those of you who haven't attended our office sessions before or haven't had the pleasure of working with me and my team, I'm Michael Swami, Director of the Enabling Services and Support Team here at the Tech Center. Our office hours are focused on a feature of our products. We typically keep it 15 to 20 minutes, demo where applicable, and give enough time for you to ask us questions. At the end, you can ask us questions about the feature you see today or questions about any of the other products that we have to offer or have deployed at your school. If you have any questions or have a training request, please do let us know. I appreciate you all being here. Today, we will look at the bulk CCCID creation feature in Apply Administration tool. And Jane Linder, Director, let me share. Jane Linder will walk us through that. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. My colleagues are keeping an eye on it, and we will pause along the way, and then at the end, try to work on getting through every single question. Thank you. So here's a quick look at the agenda for today. Jane will go over the account creation feature and then provide a demo. And then we will cover how you can request access to that feature and also share best practice recommendations. Jane, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate our enabling services team offering these office hours so we can kind of delve in a little bit more deeply on some of the features that we're shipping to work to support our students and staff. I know this has been one that has been highly anticipated. This is actually a direct result of feedback from the field. And so in 2021, when we shipped the new student account system, we realized that one of the things that change was going to a group that was going to impact was our incarcerated students, because previously in the old account system, they had a manner to whitelist emails and whitelist things that the new account system sort of closed with its additional security features. So we created the initial OpenCCC account create feature, which was just a single student at a time feature in CCCApply, so that staff who work with incarcerated students who have no access whatsoever to technology and can't possibly access the online application were able to more easily create accounts for those students and even applications should they choose. What happened shortly thereafter was the CCCID mandate. The Chancellor's Office put a memo out, which is requiring greater use and storage of the CCCID and reporting using CCCID on statewide reports. And so that was actually a really, in some ways, it was a great learning opportunity for the Tech Center, because we ended up having conversations with so many different student groups who were also not able to easily or at all access the online applications. And, we have educational programs at nursing homes that are done with staff helping students create, use a paper app, and then those staff go back and create accounts for those students. So there's just a lot of use cases around this that came out. So what we decided with feedback from the field was to expand this single account creation feature and try to provide a way to do it in a bulk upload so that colleges can try to backfill some of the accounts that are already created without a CCCID, and as well as work with some of their current students, continue to work with and support those current students who don't have access to technology. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. So the purpose for this tool is really to provide a tool that helps college staff continue to support students without access to the online CCC account and application systems, and try to help also the colleges address the CCCID gaps that impact their ability to submit statewide reporting as specified by the Chancellor's Office. Next slide, please. Okay, with that said, I do want to say that this is not a particularly student-friendly option, and we'll get into the details on that. We really want you to use it to try to help with your reporting capabilities and things like that. But again, there are more student-friendly options that are available we have a streamlined CCCApply online non-credit application. I know a lot of the non-credit programs offered at our colleges don't use that right now, but it's a lot more streamlined than the standard app. It collects a lot of the same data, but it removes residency and citizenship. So our completion rate for that, for the students who interact with that application, they complete it really quickly, and we have up to like 95% of them complete it. It's really it's been working really well for a number of the colleges that have recently implemented it for those non-credit programs. So that's some way to get your students, your non-credit students and other students to get their CCCID and it be completely official. And then also you get your application data streamed to you rather than having to key it in from paper apps. So just something to consider. We also have other options. We have a proxy that our enabling services implementations team has been able to help to solve this gap as well. It basically pops the student into an OpenCCC account so they can quickly create it and then continue to fill out whatever online form that the college has deployed. So really, this is to say, we want you to use the bulk account create tool for necessity, not convenience. It's really, there are other options that actually work better in terms of giving the student the power to keep that application. But again, we know there are lots of use cases where that's not possible. All right, next slide.
Thanks. Jane, real quick. I see someone has their hand raised, Patty. If you could type in your question in chat, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
All right. So the access to this feature is secured through a new role called the OpenCCC Administrator. So we want to, request that colleges limit access to this to just, to really only the staff who definitely need it. Your staff are going to have a CCCApply admin account and this role in order to access this feature. So what the requirements are is the same with a CCCApply Administrator role. Really, in order to get this role, you need to have director or supervisory or dean level, approval. You can submit a support ticket, and then the team will work with you to go through that process. Next slide. Do we have a question that we need to answer? Michael? Before we get into the back. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't see it on.
Okay.
Packet.
All right. So we have a few best practice recommendations. Again, we acknowledge you guys are the experts on your processes. These are more things for you guys to think about as you're going through this. Make sure the staff, have the permission, implied or explicit permission to create these accounts with the student's directory information. Again, in our research on FERPA, this isn't any kind of a violation of it, but we encourage you to work with your college leadership and college legal to make sure that whatever process that you determine to do this is aligned with that. Most of the colleges, as I say, they have another process where the students already, go in and either fill out an online form that's lays over the SIS, or they have a paper application, and that has the permission that is, involves the student's permission for you to create these records. Are these accounts created on behalf of current or past students? That can kind of impact how you approach it. And then think about the one real problem with this, which is how would students, if they want to activate this account later, how would that work? And we'll talk again. We have some best practice recommendations and things on that coming up here. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so here's the limitation that you guys need to think about carefully. What if students do want or need access in the future to this account? There's really not an easy way. There's not an easy way for staff, because in the case of, say, incarcerated students, those students, when they're released, they may move to a region that's far away from the program they were involved with at their institution. And there's no way for colleges to know when that's happening. And right now, I don't think that the Department of Corrections has, a handoff policy where they can, help students get access. If the students don't know they have an account, or they don't know what the account credentials are, when they go into CCC, they decide they want to apply maybe later on at a college near their home, or they move and they need to be able to access that. Then we have a lot of rules that block and message students about duplicate accounts that may already exist for them. And so that can stop them from subsequently creating their own account or accessing that account, because of course you hold the credentials, they don't. The good news is we do have our standard account recovery process and our standard process where, students are able to contact our 24/7 student support and recover that. They're required to prove their identity before they can get their account. And certainly they would be required to prove their identity even if the college has a process. It's going to be very important that step happen. But again, this is going to be not an easy way necessarily for students if they want to get access to this account in future. All right. And next slide. All right, so security is important. And that's why we request that limited staff have access to this, and then also that you enforce your college policies for securing student account credentials. Use secure email and password protocols. Our recommendation is that you set the use temporary password field. We'll be going over that field in a minute when we go through the demo and the more of the specs on this. We use that use temp password reset field, set that to true. That will force a password reset when or if a student reclaims their account. Again, if the staff are creating applications for the student, that's not necessarily going to be a use case where you want to set that to true, because then your staff have to go through a password reset when they're creating the application on behalf of the student. But in many other cases, setting that to true is the way you want to do that as a default. Again, for incarcerated students, there's again a special case where you would, the recommendation is you can create a generic master or parent, email account, and then you can use a +1 rule to distinguish the student email accounts on that. And that way, if you are creating applications for 300 incarcerated students in your program, it can all go resolve to that same email account. So you don't have to, log in or create individual accounts. Unless it's an incarcerated, student situation, or in a situation where students have no access to technology, the recommendation is you work with your IT staff to create, unique college email accounts that, again, allow them to get access to that email box, since it's, a college email box for them in future. So any questions that we need to answer before I move on?
Let me see if Monica can get off mute. She was having trouble earlier.
Okay.
I'm looking at chat. Nope, no questions so far.
Okay,
thank you.
Let's move on then. All right, so this is just a picture of the single account creation that we've had in place since 2021. These same fields are what you're going to be interacting with, but this is kind of a good visual so you can see this. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this is just a picture of the multi-account creation, screen you're going to be interacting with, where you're uploading a file of records, and we're going to be going over a demo of that in just a moment. And I did see a question. Let's see here. When staff request access to the bulk creation tool, is there a mechanism to notify the college district CCCApply Administrator of the request for access? At this point, when they submit a request to the staff support, there is that need for director level approval. If your college has a specific person that they want identified for these sorts of requests, please let us know. But in general, if there's a director or a dean level, person who's approving that person for access, then we will go ahead and we will put that through. So again, there's multiple CCCApply administrators at the college. So if there's one specific who your college wants to have as the keeper of the keys for this, please let us know. Okay. And yes, I'm going to get into a demo now where we, oh, yes, there is, yes, that is an important question. There is CCCApply will log data for the user associated with that account. And that's part of the security that we've put in place. We will be able to track the accounts that have been created by a specific CCCApply Administrator account. Okay, good questions. All right, so I'm going to get this organized so that I can.
And I think there's a question about a template of the upload file. And yes, we will provide that. Yes. Actually, it's linked in the documentation, I believe, Jane.
It is. It's actually, it's not linked in the documentation, but I will be showing that to everybody in the demo.
Okay. And when we send out the recording and stuff, we can work with Sandoval to send out a template copy as well to everyone who's here today.
I'm just getting to the admin.
And there is another question while you're working on that. Will the administrator also go through the ID.me process to verify themselves? And no. So you are logging in the backend, the admin tool, the CAP admin tool for Apply, which will not present you with the ID.me verification.
Okay, let me share this screen. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the single account. As I mentioned, in order to get to this, as I said, you're going to need to have this OpenCCC Administrator role. You won't see this as an option in the CCC Administrator. This field is going away because the username is actually a legacy from the old account system. We don't use username anymore. So this won't be required. We have an update in progress based on feedback from some of our early users on the multi-account creation tool. So this is going to be pulled. In the multi-account creation tab here, the first thing you would do is you download the template. So this is the template. All right, I'll show you what this looks like. There's a sample record in there that shows you, what the data is, needs to look like. Again, we have some enhancements that are happening to this based on some early adopter use of it. One of the changes we're going to be doing is starring, putting asterisks on the required fields. So those are visually easy for you to see, and providing some validation on things like the date of birth. Oh, all of a sudden it's not sharing this. Sorry. Let me, because I'm in Excel now. So hold on just a sec while I update my share. Pause share. And I'm going to share my desktop now. Okay. Everyone can see that now? And I'm going to show you, this is one I prepped with multiple records. So again, there, the password rules, etc., are the same for this as they are for our students who create the accounts themselves. So you'll need to make sure that the passwords that you fill in are adhere to that. I use a password generator, and I know that a number of our Rising Scholars teams who work with incarcerated students, that's what they've been doing. One of the things that I wanted to point out, because it gets me almost every time, is the moment you open up the template in another program like Excel, which is what I'm working at, or whatever you're going to work in on this spreadsheet to create your, CSV file, it seems to immediately mess up the date format, the default date format, and it has to be in this format of YYYYMMDD. So, the first thing you need to do is, format these cells so they don't, so that they're right. So you can just, pick the correct format and you're good to go. That's the only thing that so far has really, really caught me when I'm not thinking about it. Once you have this and you save it, save your file, you'll just go back and upload it. And I'm going to have to pause share so I can, actually, no, I'm on the desktop now, so I can do this. All right. And then you choose a file. You upload it. All right. And then you download it to check the results. All right. So I picked the wrong file. Sorry about that. So this will give you a message and say a user already exists with this email because I uploaded it before. And it gives you the, if it has detected that there's already a duplicate account, it will give you the CCCID. I'm sorry, I'm going to do that process again so I use the right file.
Jane, Patty just wanted to let you know that the date of birth formatting issue is being fixed in the release.
Oh, right. Yeah,
And then
that's
we have a question. Okay, awesome. And then we have a question from Clark asking if the name of the upload file matters.
It doesn't matter, except you just have to remember which one you're doing when you have 5 of them like I do. So, so that you don't keep picking the same one. So yeah, that's the only reason in which it matters. Let me do this again. Okay, so this one is this one. All right, so here's this one again. I want to show you, I had some where a user already exists, and then you can see some where a user was successfully added. And so, and again, you can see some of the duplication checking that's going on. And again, this is kind of the standard duplication checking that we have also built into the UI for OpenCCC, where it will let students know if an account already exists for them. So in this, I successfully added the users that didn't already have an account, and the ones that have an account, you've been given that CCCID. So either way, you successfully get that CCCID from the upload.
Jane, can you cover what the match criteria is for a student? Is it email and address?
It's first name, last name, date of birth, and it does validate that the email is unique too.
Okay, we have another question. How far back in time are they supposed to do this for? For instance, incarcerated students who applied in 2022 need to retroactively have a CCCID assigned?
So that again is kind of more a question for who you're reporting on at the current time, right? And actually, we can go back to the presentation if you want to, Michael, but I'll stop share. But so it really is up to who are the students that you are reporting on, with our, standard routine statewide reports, and then just try to cover those students.
Sorry, Jen, which slide did you want to go back to?
Okay, you can go from the demo to the next one after the demo. So after
gotcha.
this demo, just a slide, a placeholder. Okay, so here's just a touch base on the upcoming enhancements we already talked about. Username is being removed. There's going to be a new optional notes field. Again, this was great feedback from our early testers and people we demonstrated to early on in December. A lot of them, since they are filling in with past students who have a college ID, but they don't have a CCCID, there was a request to add a new notes field that the colleges can use, and they can add the college ID. That'll just be pass-through data, so that when you actually download your results, you'll have the college ID also associated to the CCCID that you created or recovered from a student who already has one. And it's going to make that a lot easier for colleges to input the results into their systems so that they can store that CCCID with that college ID. So I thought that was great feedback. We're working on that now, as well as Patty said, the required fields will be starred, and the date of birth field formatting will be handled in a more graceful manner, so it doesn't bite you like it has me when I've done it over the past month. Any questions?
Yeah, we just have one right now. Is there a way to merge multiple CCCIDs for the same student?
Again, that's always a little bit of a difficult science. It depends on, what kind of records exist. If there are a number of courses completed across those, that's a real bear. And that's, That's something that typically colleges kind of come up with their process that makes sense for them. Many times, if there's a situation where there's no course information, the student hasn't actually completed any records on the account, we will recommend they take the latest one. But like I said, we're seeing fewer of these duplicate accounts because we've really beefed up the rules to track those and to inform students when they have that. We put in a lot of messaging when students create their accounts for high school students, for example, letting them know if they do input like a .edu, we flag that and we tell them, hey, you're creating this account with an institutional email address. Are you sure you're going to have access to this when you need it? You might want to consider using a personal email that'll be permanently accessible to you. And that's one of the use cases in which sometimes students create duplicates because they can't get access to that old high school email. So we're, in a number of ways, we've tried to beef up the duplication messaging and just the messaging to students to ensure that they won't get themselves into a situation where they will feel like they need to create a duplicate account. So we're seeing some improvement.
Thank you. Another question from Michael Ward. What are the limitations for the web form for uploads? How many records can be uploaded at once?
Typically around 1,000 at a time. Initially, we were really looking into doing this via API, but first of all, that requires the colleges to implement the API, which we know this was necessary to get this out as soon as possible to get this process started. And also we want to we have to build an API management layer. So this is 1,000 at a time, but that's better than one at a time.
Awesome. We had a participant in this where the creation of the spreadsheet comes from, please.
I'm sorry, what is, I missed that.
The creation of the spreadsheet, where is it being generated from?
Okay, so when you download the template and you click on it, you'll get prompted to open that in the program of your choice. Google, if you have Google, you can use Google Sheets, or if you have Microsoft Excel, like I do, you can use Excel. Excel, I find the easiest to work in, but it's just whatever options your college provides you with for spreadsheets, you can choose which one you want.
Awesome. How often should the uploads be submitted?
It's up to you. Again, a lot of this is it's a tool, and it's kind of how it works for you. Again, we make recommendations, but you guys, it's your data and you know what you need to do with it. So it's just however often you need to keep up with the CCCID and what makes sense for your staffing level.
Great. Next question. When will the new changes be live?
These are live now. So you can request access, and we'll go through that process, and it's available now.
Great. Victor, you might need to elaborate, but is this going to be a one-step situation to transfer into Banner? I've never used CCC to create inmate accounts, so this is new to me.
It's an option. Again, we have there's a number in talking to the Rising Scholars team when we were in 2021 when we were developing the single account. Not all of the programs that work with incarcerated students do this. Again, some of them will just get the paper application and fill out fields in their SIS. So the reason that a number of the colleges like to create applications for their incarcerated students is to have a record of the programs they complete, because without the, attaching it to that CCCID, it's harder for the students to, once they leave their institution and go to someplace else in the state and continue their education, it's harder for them to track down those records. So some of our incarcerated students do that as an extra step because they really want their students to have that permanent record.
Thank you. This is from Rashette. What happens when a student submits an application on their own and a CCCID already exists? Can you elaborate on the message they receive, please?
Yes. So when they enter their information to create and submit this new account, it will actually stop them, and it will say there's already an account with with the same name and with the same information. Do you want to recover? And it'll prompt them to recover. But if the students don't have access to their email account to be able to do the account recovery, then what it will do is it'll let them know they can contact student support. The student support team has to verify the student's identity, and then they can help them to reset their email. And this is a standard
There-
process we do already. So
There's a little bit of chapter about if an API will be developed in the future.
we actually want to do a lot with APIs. We have, we've created GraphQL and integrated that with Superglue. So we have a lot of flexibility to develop our own custom APIs for example, another option for colleges to get application data that way. And so we are working on our API strategy actively. Our Superglue team is. I don't have a target date for that right now because, like I said, it's not so much the APIs that's the problem. It's the management layer, the allowing all of the access to it, monitoring that access, and having the tokens and managing those. And that's what we're building in before we can provide APIs. So more to come on that.
Thank you. Are we to create a CCCID for every paper application we accept?
Again, that's really up to your college and how you want to do your processes. Again, this is a tool that's available to you to create those, and you need to evaluate the situations that you want to track. Again, the Chancellor's Office is marching everyone towards 100% CCCID for all students, and so we wanted to make sure you have a tool in place to support that.
Thank you. Is there a set date when CCCIDs will be required for MIS reporting?
I think that's what the Chancellor's Office memo was moving for, moving the system toward. Yeah.
Good question from Gurley. Upon upload, is the application available for Superglue API to process into our SIS?
Okay, so if we do an API, is that that's like an if in the future situation? I'm not sure I understood. Could you repeat the question, Monica?
Sure. Upon upload, is the application available for the Superglue API to process into our SIS?
You mean
If it's a paper application, it isn't.
Right.
I don't know.
If the staff, for example, if the staff, incarcerated staff, or the staff who are working with the students who are using paper apps, if they go through and they create an application on behalf of the student, it would absolutely be available. It would come down through Superglue just like everything. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And Patty's clarification is yes, this is just a tool for creating accounts. So if you create the accounts, that data doesn't come until an application is submitted with that data.
Okay, how does this affect? Sorry,
go ahead.
keep going.
No, go ahead, Monica.
I'm moving on to the next question. Do we still want to elaborate on the Superglue question?
No, that's
okay. From L. Lopez, how does this affect students who are marked as not downloaded and processed manually? How is their progress monitored?
So not download isn't a status that's applicable anymore. Now that all 116 colleges are on Superglue, there's not a download client anymore. So the data is actually delivered within typically milliseconds of the student submitting through the Superglue and to the staging table. So I guess this sounds like it's a process at your college that I don't understand. So what I would recommend is, again, this is a new tool, and I think that we're going to be learning from the field, how you are using it, what are some of the friction points that, we need to, make enhancements to address. So if if your processes it's not working how you want it to, or you'd have some suggestions for enhancement, I would encourage you to open a staff support ticket and then let us know what's going on with you and how it's working with your processes or not working with your processes.
Great, thank you. What would be the process if a student wants to reclaim their account possibly years later?
Yeah, again, that is, I think, the biggest limitation to staff created accounts is that either your college has to have some sort of process, but again, like I said, you can't read students' minds or actions, right? None of us are omnipotent. So we don't know when, for example, they've left the incarcerated students program and they've moved back home and want to reclaim that account. So again, take your program's best. Take a look at how you want to build your process out with this in the best way possible. Again, if the student tries to sign in through OpenCCC and create a new account, the duplicate rules should catch them and encourage them to contact our 24/7 student support so that they can recover their account.
We have a question from Monica Boy. Since the Chancellor's Office is requiring every student to have a CCCID, why does a single institution have to refer to their policies and procedures on whether or not we should create CCCIDs for every paper application we receive?
Well, right. That's what I'm saying is that it sounds to me like the Chancellor's Office is encouraging everyone to get to that point. They do. So they want to be able to have that, unifying identifier, for all of the data that they process.
Do we need to create a CCCID for deceased students?
If only, I would say, if you are still reporting on their data. If you're submitting statewide reports for their data.
Okay. How does it work if a student created their own account in the past, but no longer have internet access and are taking current courses?
Well, then if you were to attempt to create their ID, you would be, if an ID already exists. So for example, they're in a program at your college and they filled out a paper application, but they already had a CCCID. It should, in that upload I showed you, it found the student and it gave you the CCCID. So you can link up with it that way.
Okay. I think you have covered most, or Patty has tag teamed a lot in the chat. So thank you so much for your support, Patty. We missed anything? Okay, Marilyn, I missed the beginning. Do we need to provide the CCCIDs and the student info back to CCCApply?
Okay, no, you don't, because once you create the CCCID, it's stored in our student profile data that we track already. And so that student profile data is held. And then when the student submits their application, it's included. So the application data always includes the student profile data, and we do store that.
Thank you. One more. Is there a hard deadline to assign students a CCCID that do not have one? How will colleges be affected if the deadline is not met? Will the MIS Spring 2024 submission require CCCIDs and reject records that do not have one?
I don't think they ever would reject the records. I think, again, the initial request from the Chancellor's Office was for everyone to have a CCCID by fall 2023. But obviously colleges were really struggling to meet that deadline. And so my understanding was that for this spring, and again, I would recommend we get the memo and double check this, but there's only a requirement for a total of 20% off overall programs, and then that to increase to 100% in time.
Okay, I think that clears our chat. If we missed anything, please chime in.
Okay, I have a few more slides to go through, and then we'll do another round of Q&A. All right, let's talk about the staff verified status. So accounts created by this process are assumed to be legitimate. And again, that's another thing for you to consider. You're vouching for these students. You're saying that they're real, they're from programs where your staff has interacted, or that these are real students. So when they're created, these applications are given a ID.me workflow status of staff verified, which means that you have vouched for them and they're real. Those applications will not, those students, should they go in later, or if staff go in to create the applications on behalf of the student, they will not be prompted to go through the ID.me verification process. They will not bypass the spam filter. They will actually run through the spam filter, but they won't be pended in the spam filter. They'll be delivered directly to the colleges. So again, there are nuances to this, because this is something that staff are doing on behalf of the students, and therefore we assume it's legitimate. So that's something for you to consider, and that's why we're so careful with this role. and, why we log the accounts created by the admins who use this. Okay, next slide. All right, so we have very excellent documentation developed by my colleague Patty Donahue on this, and it gives you a lot more details than we're able to do in the time that we have at our disposal, and a lot of step-by-step instructions and trying to answer your questions. But of course, we do know there's going to be questions, so make sure you open a support ticket if you have questions. Then also we have, I just showed you the error, how to link. The error messages are also part of that link above, but I provided a direct link to the error messages should you want to have that handy. Okay, next slide. Michael, did you want to take this over and then we can do Q&A at the end?
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a lot to cover in a short time, and thanks for all the questions. Talking about questions, if you are not already a member, if you're not already participating in our forums in ccctechnology.info, that's our staff support community, please go and create an account and subscribe, especially to the system updates. That's where Jane and Jane, especially with any SSS release, post notes, release notes, and what is happening. You will hear about maintenance downtime if there is any, so you can plan for it. So please subscribe. And also, after you leave here, if you have any questions about the tool, please start a conversation there. You have a question, there's a high possibility many of your colleagues have the same question, and we can chime in with a response there that we can all keep an eye on. And that ccctechnology.info is where we host a private spam discussion group as well. If any of you have interest in participating, sharing trends you're seeing, or want to learn about trends, and if you're not a member, please reach out to our college experience managers. You'll have the email ID in the next slide, and we can send you a link to get you added to that group. So our college experience managers, again, if you haven't worked with them, they are your single point of contact. Each college has a college experience manager. We have their info on our website, but if you have trouble remembering their email ID, you can reach the group by sending an email to cems@ccctechcenter.org, and your account owner manager will respond to you. Again, this is the team that can help you with your setting up your non-credit application, international application, California Promise Grant. If you have access requests to the private spam group, these are the folks you've been working with to upgrade your SuperGlue implementations. And one of the very important service we provide is ongoing training for solutions that you might have already deployed or might be considering deploying. We understand folks step into new roles. So, if you're new to administering Apply or want to try to understand the report center and other features of the product, please reach out to us. Happy to set up a training session for you. Mm-hmm. And coming up, we will be at the CISWA conference, and also Jane will be in attendance at CACRO conference. If you would like to connect with us, provide us feedback on any of the features, or have questions about what's coming down the road, either the remaining part of this fiscal year or this year, please reach out, drop us a note. We'll be happy to set up some time to meet with you and go over any questions you might have. All right, we will open the floor again for any questions that you might have.
Yeah, there was one question from David about the link for requesting access. So I wanted to just point that out, that is the staff support team, and the link is right there. And again, questions, wanting to talk or meet about this new tool, submit a staff support ticket for that, and we can follow up with you, or contact your CEM with the CEM's email that Michael just posted. The only really great ideas come from the field, and so this tool would never have been come to fruition, along with pretty much all the good enhancements to CCCApply without input. So we do encourage you to submit your ideas.
Any other questions, Monica?
Patty's answered so many. Maybe you can clarify. Jane, last one for Monica Boy. So according to Patty, we have to have all reportable 100% of reported students with CCCIDs by June 2024.
Yeah,
Did
that
I
was just
understand that
Patty's.
correctly?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
from Patty was just quoting from the memo, which I'm glad she had up her sleeve because I didn't know it was 100% as of June. But yeah, I knew that they were that the chancellor's office really does desire for CCCID to be used.
Okay.
Oh, and
did you
yes,
say email
there is
address?
actually, yeah, Erin, there is. We are the student success team, and I don't know if you've been involved in any of the Reimagine Apply conversations, but there's a lot of conversations going on right now about creating tailored applications. And I've been demoing some of this to various colleges, and we have the architecture in place for these tailored applications. But again, the real crux of any kind of tailored application for a specific student group is consensus in across our system as to what fields are able to be removed, because 85% of the fields in CCCApply are legislatively, they're mandated. So we actually have to work with the legislature to get permission to remove some of these fields that don't apply to student groups, certain student groups. So that's where we're at right now. We have to have those discussions on what would these tailored application workflows look like? What could we remove to make them streamlined, and what is required to still be there? So those discussions are part of this whole Reimagine Apply ongoing effort that's been going on now for about a year and a half, 2 years. It's out of the chancellor's office is working with Accenture, a consultancy group, to basically raise awareness that, that we want to have this kind of tailored application going forward. Unfortunately, I don't have my magic wand to wave and make all those regulations go away. So we're working one step at a time to get there.
Okay, we have a question from Garrett that I'm not super sure if it got answered correctly. If a student's email is included in the bulk account creation, will the student be able to use this email to retrieve their username, reset password if logging into CCCApply for the first time?
Only if they have been passed the credentials from the staff who created it. And that is that inherent challenge, right? It's not easy for staff or for students to necessarily connect over that. And again, they can go through the account recovery and the student support system to prove their identity and get access to it. But again, it's not easy.
Thank you. From Erin, is there a plan to create a short application for ISA programs similar to international and non-credit?
Yep, and that's what I just was talking about. Yes, there is a plan.
This is a requirement only for students that we are still reporting on, correct?
Yeah, as far as my understanding that the memo is saying that when submitting reports. So that's why I can't come with an actual date on how far back you go, but however far back you report.
Great. From Corey, after staff create the account, but the student later logs in, if they change their information, will the staff verified be changed to unverified, which would require an ID verification?
Yes, that is actually a good point that I meant to talk about and didn't. So I'm glad you brought that up. The staff verified status, like the verified status with ID.me, does expire 1 year from the account being created with that status, or if the student changes their email, their name, date of birth, whatever, then it will flip to unverified. Yes.
Mark, could you publish the URL to the memo?
Yeah, Patty, if you have that up your sleeve.
I think Patty has done an amazing job and has answered so many of these questions in chat. I hope we have caught up on all of your questions.
She can't come off on mute. She posted the name of it, the actual specific memo right there above in a response to Primavera. And so she's looking for it.
We'll look for it and follow up. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can definitely follow up when we post the prezo and include that.
Awesome. We have a follow-up from Corey. Is there a way to see students' current ID.me verified status using the multi-account creation tool?
No, there's not. The only way you can see their account status is through the data when they submit their application, or through like a Zoom. If you have a Zoom with the student or they bring their account up on their phone, they always have the most recent status on their account. The Technology Center is working to create a new student profile data set that where, if the status changes, we can send you that information. So that is something that we have on our, kind of longer term roadmap for the ID.me integration, because that is a, we know a lot of the colleges don't want to wait for the students to submit an application to get status changes.
Awesome. I think that covers Linda's question. So I think we're caught up for now.
Thanks, Monica and Patty.
Thank you, everybody.
Jane. Sandoval, how are we doing on time? I think we have a few more minutes. We will leave it open if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, we're at 12:51 right now, Michael. Just leave the chat open for a few more minutes, see if we get some more questions.
Sounds good. I don't know if we already addressed this. I think Julie has a question. Is there a plan to get the verification in colleague?
So the verification, Julie, meaning the ID.me verification, it should be delivered to colleague already through the Superglue college adapter.
4.9.
Yeah, 4.9. So Julie, if you're not getting those fields, it just means that that Butte needs to upgrade to the 4.9 college adapter, which has all of those new fields.
Yeah, and just expand on that. So I have to go back and look at the status with Butte. I know Ludmila was working on it, and you might already be in prod with that. But then any internal processes that the team needs to develop to make that visible to A&R folks and others, that might still be in progress if you're not seeing it today.
Mm-hmm.
What is the number that it shows if a student is verified?
I think the only thing, so it's actually a text field that'll say verified or unverified or whatever. However, there is a new fraud score of 7 that'll show.
I think the verified status comes over as null for those who didn't go through the process. Jane, am I remembering that correctly? And then verified.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question. I was reading the chat.
No worries. I was thinking out loud about the different values for the ID.me status field, but it's text like Jane mentioned, not a number. If that helps,
So there's
Linda.
verified, unverified, expired, and staff verified. So
Thanks, Jane.
The new that's specific to ID.me if a student is verified, Linda.
And Linda also has a question about access to that. Today, you should have the access, or if your college is on Superglue 4.9, that ID.me verified status field is being delivered to your to the staging table, Superglue staging table, Linda. So if your team is not seeing it yet, you might want to verify. I can't tell which college you're from. I'm sorry. If you want to let me know in chat, we can get back to you. Let you know if you are on Superglue 4.9.
Right. Yeah. And so, Monica, to answer your question about entering it, most of the staff that college staff I worked with in like December, January, who were sort of early adopters and we were demoing and testing with, they were able to develop systems to pull that data into Colleague or Banner or PeopleSoft, and that was why the request for the CCCID, because once they have the CCCID as part of that row, they can use that, the results spreadsheet, to create an automated process that would allow them to not have to hand key the CCCID.
And Linda had a question about the new fraud score 7. What does that stand for?
Right, and I told her I had answered that earlier, saying that is the ID me verified, so again, it doesn't really bypass the spam filter. It just ensures that it won't be pended in the spam filter. We still look at it because, we want to learn from those.
Hope that helped, Linda.
All right.
I see one question you may not have answered from Sylvia. Are students who don't complete their application still receiving reminders about their in-progress application?
Yes, they still receive the automated reminders after 24 hours and 1 week.
I think that's everything.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Jane and Michael.
Yeah,
Patty
thank you, Jane, Patty, and Monica.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording now. So.
Have a good day.